Deception is woven into the fabric of human social interaction. From the harmless white lie that spares a friend's feelings to the elaborate fraud that destroys lives, lying exists on a spectrum that every person navigates daily. Yet beneath this universal behavior lies a complex psychological landscape that researchers have only begun to map in recent decades. Understanding why people lie, how they construct falsehoods, and what separates occasional deception from pathological dishonesty reveals fundamental truths about human cognition, morality, and social functioning. The act of lying is far more cognitively demanding than telling the truth. When a person fabricates information, their brain must simultaneously suppress the truthful response, construct a plausible alternative narrative, monitor their own behavior for signs of deception, track what the listener knows or believes, and maintain consistency with previous statements. Neuroimaging studies have shown that lying activates multiple brain regions, particularly the prefrontal cortex responsible for executive function and behavioral inhibition. This cognitive load explains why liars often display subtle behavioral cues, not because of guilt or fear necessarily, but because managing deception consumes mental resources. The motivations behind lying vary significantly and shape the psychological profile of the liar. Psychologists broadly categorize lies into self-oriented deception, lies told for personal gain or to avoid punishment, and other-oriented deception, lies told to protect or benefit someone else. Most people engage in both types throughout their lives, with studies suggesting the average person tells 1 to 2 lies per day. These everyday lies serve social lubricants, maintaining relationships, avoiding conflict, or protecting privacy. They represent normal psychological functioning rather than pathology. However, certain individuals lie with remarkable frequency and often without clear external motivation. This pattern characterizes pathological lying, a behavior associated with several personality disorders but not yet recognized as a standalone diagnosis in psychiatric literature. Pathological liars often deceive even when the truth would serve them better, suggesting that the act of deception itself provides some psychological reward. Recent research indicates this behavior may stem from abnormalities in the prefrontal cortex's white matter, potentially explaining why some individuals find lying easier and less stressful than the general population. The development of deceptive behavior begins in early childhood and follows a predictable trajectory. Children typically begin lying between ages 2 and 4, coinciding with the development of theory of mind, the understanding that others have different knowledge and beliefs than oneself. Early lies are transparent and unsophisticated, but as executive function develops through adolescence, lying becomes more strategic and harder to detect. This developmental pattern reveals that lying is intrinsically linked to advancing cognitive abilities. In fact, children who lie earlier and more skillfully often demonstrate superior executive function and social intelligence. Cultural context profoundly influences both the frequency and acceptability of deception. Collectivist cultures tend to show higher rates of other-oriented lying, where deception serves to maintain group harmony or protect others' reputations. Individualist cultures report more self-oriented lies focused on personal advancement or self-presentation. These cultural variations demonstrate that while the capacity for deception appears universal, its expression is shaped by social values and norms. The psychological impact of lying extends beyond the immediate interaction. Chronic liars often experience what researchers call liar's paradox. As lies accumulate, maintaining consistency requires increasingly complex mental gymnastics, leading to cognitive fatigue and anxiety. Additionally, successful deception can erode the liar's own sense of authenticity and self-concept. Studies show that frequent lying correlates with higher rates of anxiety, depression, and relationship dissatisfaction, though the causal direction remains debated. Does lying cause psychological distress, or do people in distress lie more frequently to cope with their circumstances? Understanding the psychology of a liar requires acknowledging that deception exists in shades of gray rather than black and white. The boundary between adaptive social behavior and destructive dishonesty is permeable and context-dependent. As we explore the mechanisms of deception and the characteristics of habitual liars, we confront uncomfortable truths about human nature. That lying is both a sophisticated cognitive achievement and a potential pathway to psychological dysfunction, that it can protect and destroy in equal measure, and that perhaps all of us contain both the casual deceiver and, under certain circumstances, the capacity for more serious dishonesty. The neurological architecture underlying deception reveals why some individuals lie more readily than others. Brain imaging studies using functional MRI have consistently demonstrated that lying activates the anterior cingulate cortex, prefrontal cortex, and posterior parietal regions, areas associated with conflict monitoring, response inhibition, and working memory. When someone tells the truth, these regions show minimal activation because truthful responses flow automatically from memory. Deception, conversely, requires active suppression of truthful information while simultaneously constructing and maintaining a false narrative. Research by psychiatrist Yaling Yang found that pathological liars possess 22 to 26% more white matter in their prefrontal cortex compared to control groups. White matter facilitates rapid communication between brain regions, potentially making the cognitive gymnastics of lying less taxing for these individuals. This finding suggests a neurobiological basis for chronic dishonesty. Some people may be literally wired to lie more easily. However, neuroscience cannot fully explain the psychological motivations that drive different types of liars. Psychologists have identified distinct categories of liars based on motivation and pattern. The occasional liar tells infrequent falsehoods tied to specific circumstances, avoiding punishment, gaining a discrete advantage, or protecting someone's feelings. Their lying produces measurable stress responses, including elevated cortisol, increased heart rate, and activation of the sympathetic nervous system. This physiological reaction forms the basis of polygraph testing, though such tests remain controversial due to high false positive rates. Habitual liars represent a more concerning category. These individuals lie frequently across multiple contexts, often without strong external pressure to do so. Their deception becomes quasi-automatic, a default response to social situations. Research indicates habitual liars show diminished activity in the amygdala, the brain's emotional processing center, when lying, suggesting they experience less emotional distress from dishonesty than occasional liars. This neural adaptation mirrors findings in other behavioral domains. Repeated engagement in an initially stressful behavior leads to habituation and reduced stress response. Pathological liars occupy the extreme end of the spectrum. Unlike habitual liars who deceive for identifiable gains, pathological liars often fabricate stories that provide no obvious benefit and sometimes actively harm their interests. They may lie about credentials, experiences, or identities, constructing elaborate alternative realities. Psychologist Charles Dyke describes pathological lying as falsification entirely disproportionate to any discernible end in view. This behavior often co-occurs with personality disorders, particularly narcissistic, borderline, and antisocial personality disorders, though it can appear independently. Compulsive liars represent yet another subset, individuals who lie impulsively, often experiencing an irresistible urge to deceive even when they recognize the behavior as destructive. They frequently report feeling tension before lying and relief afterward, a pattern similar to other impulse control disorders. Some researchers propose that compulsive lying may share neurological features with behavioral addictions, where the act of deception itself becomes intrinsically rewarding through dopamine pathway activation. The construction of lies follows predictable patterns that reveal the cognitive constraints on deception. Liars tend to provide fewer details than truth-tellers because fabricating specifics requires more cognitive resources and creates more opportunities for contradiction. They use more negative emotion words and fewer first-person pronouns, linguistically distancing themselves from their statements. Their stories often lack the sensory richness and temporal complexity of genuine memories. These patterns have led to the development of linguistic analysis tools used in forensic contexts, though skilled liars can learn to mimic truth-telling patterns. Detection of deception proves remarkably difficult despite popular belief in behavioral tells. Meta-analyses of deception detection studies show that people perform barely better than chance, approximately 54% accuracy, when judging whether someone is lying. Even trained professionals like police officers, judges, and psychologists show only marginal improvement. This difficulty stems from the absence of reliable, universal indicators of deception. While liars may display increased nervous behaviors, reduced eye contact, or speech hesitations, truth-tellers under stress show identical patterns. The most reliable deception detection comes not from observing behavior but from analyzing statement consistency and cognitive load. The cognitive interview technique, developed by psychologists Ronald Fisher and Edward Geiselman, asks individuals to recall events in reverse chronological order, from different perspectives, or while performing secondary tasks. Truth-tellers can generally maintain consistency under these conditions because they're accessing genuine memories. Liars struggle because they must actively reconstruct their fabricated narratives under increased cognitive demand, leading to contradictions and errors. Certain psychological conditions increase both the frequency and nature of lying. Individuals with antisocial personality disorder lie strategically and without remorse, viewing deception as a tool for manipulation and control. Those with narcissistic personality disorder lie to maintain grandiose self-images and avoid narcissistic injury. Borderline personality disorder can involve lying driven by emotional dysregulation and fear of abandonment. Importantly, these clinical populations demonstrate that persistent lying often serves psychological functions beyond simple material gain. It can regulate self-esteem, manage relationships, or cope with internal emotional states. The development of chronic lying patterns often traces to childhood experiences. Children raised in environments where honesty was severely punished may learn that lying provides protection. Those who experienced chronic invalidation might develop patterns of deception to maintain a sense of control over their narrative. Conversely, children who received inconsistent responses to dishonesty, sometimes punished, sometimes ignored, often show higher rates of lying in adulthood, as the unpredictable reinforcement schedule creates stronger behavioral conditioning. Self-deception represents a particularly fascinating dimension of lying psychology. Research demonstrates that people often believe their own lies, particularly when those lies serve ego-protective functions. This phenomenon involves motivated reasoning where individuals selectively attend to confirming evidence while dismissing contradictory information. Self-deception may actually enhance the credibility of interpersonal lies. Someone who believes their own fabrication shows none of the physiological or behavioral markers of conscious deception. Some evolutionary psychologists argue that self-deception evolved precisely because it makes interpersonal deception more effective. The relationship between intelligence and lying proves complex and nonlinear. Higher intelligence correlates with more sophisticated lying, better constructed narratives, greater consistency, and superior detection avoidance. However, extremely intelligent individuals sometimes lie less frequently because they can identify alternative solutions to problems that would tempt others toward deception. Additionally, high intelligence combined with strong executive function allows better resistance to impulsive lying. The relationship between emotional intelligence and deception shows similar complexity. High emotional intelligence enables both more effective lying, through superior understanding of others' mental states, and potentially less frequent lying through better relationship management skills. The ripple effects of chronic lying extend far beyond individual acts of deception, fundamentally altering the liar's psychology, relationships, and place in society. While a single lie might serve adaptive purposes, patterns of habitual dishonesty create cascading consequences that reshape both internal experience and external reality. Understanding these outcomes illuminates why lying, despite its apparent short-term advantages, often proves psychologically costly over time. The most immediate casualty of chronic lying is trust, both the trust others place in the liar and the liar's trust in themselves. Relationships built on deception exist in a state of fragility, requiring constant maintenance of false narratives. Research by psychologist Bella DePaulo demonstrates that liars must track not only what they've told each person but also what various individuals know about each other, creating an exponentially complex web of information management. This cognitive burden manifests as chronic stress, hypervigilance, and difficulty with intimacy. Many habitual liars report feeling profoundly alone even in relationships, unable to be truly known because their authentic self remains hidden beneath layers of fabrication. The phenomenon researchers call liar's remorse affects even those who lie without apparent conscience in the moment. Longitudinal studies show that individuals who engage in frequent deception report lower life satisfaction, reduced self-esteem, and higher rates of depression and anxiety disorders. The mechanism appears to involve cognitive dissonance, the psychological discomfort arising from the gap between one's actions and self-concept. Most people view themselves as fundamentally honest, so chronic lying creates internal conflict that can manifest as psychological distress. Some individuals resolve this dissonance by adjusting their self-concept, coming to view themselves as dishonest or manipulative, which further erodes psychological well-being. Professional and social consequences compound these psychological effects. When exposed, liars face severe reputational damage that extends beyond the specific deception. The revelation that someone has lied creates retrospective doubt about all previous interactions. People question not just the identified lies but everything the person has ever claimed. This totality of distrust can result in social ostracism, professional termination, and relationship dissolution. The damage proves particularly severe because rebuilding trust requires consistent honesty over extended periods. Yet former liars face heightened scrutiny, where even truthful statements may be questioned. Treatment for pathological and compulsive lying presents significant challenges because these behaviors often resist standard therapeutic approaches. Unlike many psychological issues where the patient desires change, pathological liars frequently lack insight into their behavior or motivation to modify it. When treatment occurs, it typically addresses underlying conditions such as personality disorders, impulse control issues, or trauma rather than lying itself. Cognitive behavioral therapy can help individuals identify triggers for lying, develop alternative coping strategies, and practice honest communication. Dialectical behavior therapy has shown promise for liars with borderline personality disorder, helping them develop emotion regulation skills that reduce the impulse to lie under distress. For lying associated with antisocial personality disorder, treatment outcomes remain poor. Individuals with this condition often view honesty as strategic weakness rather than moral imperative, making them unmotivated to change absent external pressure. Even when they engage in treatment to avoid legal consequences or maintain relationships, the instrumental nature of their participation limits genuine behavioral change. This reality highlights an uncomfortable truth. Some people lie because it works, and absent sufficient negative consequences, they have little incentive to stop. The most effective interventions for reducing lying occur in childhood, before patterns become entrenched. Research by developmental psychologist Victoria Talwar shows that children raised in environments emphasizing the positive value of honesty rather than the punishment for lying develop stronger truth-telling tendencies. When parents respond to discovered lies with calm discussion about why honesty matters and how lies affect relationships, children internalize these values. Conversely, harsh punishment for lying often increases deceptive behavior as children learn to lie more skillfully to avoid consequences. The societal implications of widespread deception have intensified in the digital age. Social media platforms enable identity construction and curation at unprecedented scales, blurring boundaries between self-presentation and deception. Studies show that people routinely misrepresent their lives online, exaggerating accomplishments, editing photos to distort appearance, and crafting narratives that omit contradictory information. While technically accurate in isolated instances, these curated presentations create false overall impressions. This phenomenon has normalized a certain level of deception in digital spaces, potentially eroding societal expectations for honesty. The proliferation of misinformation and deep-fake technology raises profound questions about truth in public discourse. When political figures, media personalities, and ordinary citizens can be convincingly depicted saying or doing things they never did, the epistemological foundation of shared reality fractures. Psychologists studying this phenomenon observe that repeated exposure to false information creates familiarity, which the brain misinterprets as truth, a cognitive bias exploited by propagandists throughout history but now deployable at scale. The long-term psychological impact of inhabiting information environments where deception is pervasive and often undetectable remains unknown but concerning. Legal and ethical frameworks struggle to address many forms of deception. While fraud, perjury, and false advertising carry legal penalties, most lies exist in zones of moral ambiguity without clear sanctions. This creates situations where rational self-interest may favor dishonesty despite ethical considerations. Behavioral economists have demonstrated that people lie more when they can maintain plausible deniability or when dishonesty serves in-group interests. These findings suggest that reducing deception requires not just individual moral development but structural changes that alter incentives and increase accountability. The relationship between truth-telling and mental health operates bidirectionally. While chronic lying damages psychological well-being, enhanced honesty correlates with improved health outcomes. Studies tracking individuals who commit to radical honesty for extended periods report decreased stress, improved relationships, and enhanced self-esteem. However, completely unfiltered honesty creates its own problems. Social relationships depend on some degree of tact and discretion. The psychological ideal appears to involve authentic self-representation coupled with compassionate consideration of others' feelings, a balance requiring sophisticated social-emotional skills. Emerging research in moral psychology suggests that the capacity for deception may be inseparable from other valued human capabilities. The same cognitive flexibility that enables lying facilitates creativity, hypothetical thinking, and literary imagination. Theory of mind, the ability to understand that others have different knowledge and beliefs, makes both empathy and deception possible. This entanglement suggests that efforts to eliminate lying entirely might inadvertently compromise other important human faculties. The goal, rather, should be channeling the cognitive capabilities underlying deception toward prosocial ends. The psychology of lying ultimately reveals that deception is neither simple vice nor evolutionary vestige but a complex behavior arising from the same cognitive sophistication that enables human cooperation and culture. Understanding why people lie, how lying affects them, and what separates adaptive from destructive dishonesty provides crucial insight into human nature. Most people navigate between honesty and deception throughout their lives, telling occasional lies while maintaining fundamentally truthful self-presentation. For the minority who cross into chronic, pathological deception, the behavior often signals underlying psychological distress or neurological differences requiring compassionate, evidence-based intervention rather than mere moral condemnation. As technology amplifies both our capacity for deception and our vulnerability to being deceived, developing individual and collective wisdom about lying becomes increasingly urgent. This wisdom requires acknowledging that perfect honesty is neither possible nor desirable, while recognizing that normalized dishonesty corrodes the trust necessary for functional relationships and societies. The path forward involves fostering environments where honesty is rewarded, teaching children the relational value of truth-telling, and creating structures that reduce incentives for deception. Most fundamentally, it requires each person to examine their own relationship with truth, recognizing that the lies we tell others often begin with the lies we tell ourselves. The liar's psychology, in all its complexity, ultimately reflects broader questions about identity, morality, and the nature of truth itself. In understanding those who deceive, we gain insight not just into a troubling behavior but into the architecture of human cognition and the eternal tension between self-interest and social harmony that defines the human condition.